Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner with you on this Friday, June 12th, recording in the morning. Got my new Illini Inquirer gear here, Joey. We got a new shipment in for you, Kyle, and I. So next time I see you, I'll be like Santa Jeremy dropping all this off. But it really was Mrs. Werner, Tiffany, that put this all together. So you can thank her. We got a new shipment of Illini Inquirer gear. So we'll look nice for this new football season coming up.
That does not surprise me that it was Mrs. Werner who is doing this. Yeah, I'm excited. I was going to say, what'd you get? Forget my address? Can't get something in the mail to me?
She just dropped them off today. She just dropped them off today. So we got some full zip ups. We got some quarter zip ups.
Ooh.
New polo. We needed new polos. You and I have gotten a little bigger since the last time we got a shipment in.
Yes, I have. My problem is, outside of the lack of exercise and eating like crap, I'm just tall.
You're tall.
So it's an issue. And big guys got to worry about the belly popping out if you put your arms up.
Werner, way to call me out there. No, I've gotten bigger too. So I needed some new stuff. And you're just a tall man.
You know what? Well, there's other issues, but the height. We'll stick on the height for now.
All right, we do have a lot to talk about. Illinois adds another late addition to the class of 2026. We'll talk about that. 4 new commitments in the class of 2027, plus another wave of official visitors this weekend. 5 uncommitted guys, 2 committed guys. So plenty to talk about. But the heart of this podcast is going to be, Joey and I were just chatting at some of these camps. I was like, I feel like there's some guys we haven't talked enough about on the podcast. Like, we've talked a lot about the newcomers. We've talked a lot about guys who are intriguing, who could take a step forward, especially at the new positions in this new defense. But there are players that are really important to this team that I feel like we need to talk more about. So we're going to have a big segment on that at some point. But Joey, another late addition to the class of 2026. A lot more of these Pat Ryan specials than we've had in the past. Another in-state kid, Dane Eisenmenger out of Tolono Unity, quarterback of the state championship team, led Unity to the state final game. And what an epic game it was against Byron. It reminded me, Joey, this would have been like 2010, 2011, when Ty Isaac and Joliet Catholic played Jordan Westerkamp, who's a phenomenal wide receiver. Was that Montini Catholic at the time? But an epic state title game regardless. Westerkamp had like 300 yards receiving, and Ty Isaac ran for like 300 yards, and just state championship records in that one. Well, you had Eisenmenger throw for 500 plus yards and 7 touchdowns, state title records. And then you had Caden Considine, Byron's running back, run for 300 plus yards, set a state title record there. Illinois takes both of those stars of the class of 3A state championship game. So, Joey, what'd you make of Illinois adding the 6'4", 210-pound quarterback right down the road 10 miles south in Tolono Unity in Dane Eisenmenger?
Yeah, he's a kid who grew up less than 10 miles from the stadium. He's very accomplished high school quarterback. Like, if you're going to add late, and like you've seen this a little bit, you look at like Nate Senshi, right? Like 2 guys who are committed elsewhere late in the state. Brett Bielema or in the state rather, but late in the process. Brett Bielema's got a couple scholarships. Where are you looking? You're looking to fill out within the state. Obviously, Senshi was committed to Ivy League. Eisenmenger committed to Central Missouri. And Brett Bielema says, hey, let's go get these guys. And for those guys, of course, you take those opportunities. I'm sure it's not the easiest decision all the time to tell a place that you've been committed to no, but you're also playing at Illinois and you're playing in the Big Ten. There's more depth in the quarterback room. And, I still think there's kind of a gulf of experience right behind, you've got Caden Hauser, and then there's a lot of inexperience behind him. Eisenmenger doesn't accomplish kind of filling that gap, but you add another competitive quarterback. And you and I were talking, Jeremy, like you go and watch his tape. We don't want to try to say like, I can't believe this kid wasn't a power forward darling. That's not what we're trying to say, but like, the tape suggests, and the tape, the numbers, all of the makeup suggest a lot more than, he should have had some more opportunities on the table. He's committed to a Division II school. If you're in Eastern Illinois or Western Illinois and Illinois State, it's interesting that some of those more FCS in-state programs weren't looking around at him. But yeah, man, it's a good move for Illinois, and we'll see what happens with him, right? But get him in the building, let him be a part of this, and just add another competitive quarterback to that room.
Yeah, and you caught up with Tony Reitz. Great interview. It's up at Illini Inquirer right now. And I thought he said it right. Like, kudos to Central Missouri, Division II school, for saying, yeah, you can get out of your scholarship here. We'll let you out of your national letter of intent to go to Illinois, because they understand what the case is. Most guys going to that level or the FCS level are just trying to play well enough to get that next step up, right? And get that check at some point. And it just so happens Eisenmenger gets it late in the process from Illinois. And for me, it makes sense. Like, Illinois awards 105 scholarships. There's now 105 roster spots. Illinois gives scholarships to all of them now. So this is kind of like a guy they used to take as a preferred walk-on. I kind of look at it as a PWO plus now, because these guys get scholarships, but they don't get like the revenue share. They don't get that kind of money when it comes on top of the NIL stuff. But this kind of guy you want in your program. He's a winner, man. He led Unity football to a state runner-up finish. He led Unity basketball to a third-place finish as a key member of that team. He's a pitcher for a Unity baseball team that went to the sectional final. I just think there's a quality there where that guy, 6'4", 210, he's got the size, obviously, but he cares about Illinois football. He's local. So at the end of the day, the worst thing that comes out of this is he's a great guy in your locker room, great guy in workouts. And if it didn't work out at quarterback, maybe he's got some tight end potential. But at quarterback, I agree with you, Joey. Like, I can understand why Power 4 schools wouldn't look at him, but Eastern Illinois offered. I'm shocked there wasn't more FCS interest here. Like, there's just enough of an athlete, solid arm strength, but just the production and the winning that has happened with him. I'm surprised he didn't get a little bit more chance from that. So it's intriguing depth, and he's a big, solid arm, good athlete. And you do have some questions beyond Carson Boyd and Michael Clayton. We'll talk about Sladen Shack here in a moment, but they do need some more bodies in that quarterback room as well, because Jershawn Newton's playing quarterback now. Let's be frank, because we can. Like, he could end up at running back or linebacker. That's a guy who's a good enough athlete that could end up at a different spot, and just kind of got an awkward delivery a little bit. So if he moves positions at some point in his career, it's nice to have another emergency option that can go in and potentially compete, or at least give you some backup reps at some point. So I don't mind the gamble. And I think the upside is, at worst, you get a really good program guy, Joey.
Yeah, the other upside is you get 250 more people from Tolono, from Philo, from all the schools that make up Unity coming to the games. And like, it's also, they didn't do it for goodwill because he's got talent, but you get some goodwill out of this too, right? And like, if you're Brett Bielema, I would call every school in the state like, hey, you remember that 3A title game that was awesome? We took their two best players when no one else in the Power 4 would. That's right. Like, we are committed to recruiting the state of Illinois. Tony Reitz brought it up to me like, this is good for small town football players. And I was in Decatur, and I think Dane is a better quarterback than him, but Shelbyville, which is south of Decatur, someone's going to tell me the directions. I don't care. They had a quarterback on a state title run. They had a good run. His name was Turner Poland. Eastern Illinois looked at him a little bit. He ended up at McKendree. It's the same thing. Maybe he could have been a tight end at another level, but to have a school in the state open those doors a little bit. And hey, worst case, you say he's a locker room guy. The other worst case is you've got some practice film in 2 years to go send out to some other schools and say, hey, this is it. And you're going to have Brett Bielema, Barry Lunny, Art Sikowski, Mike New saying, yeah, this dude was great. He was great to have in our locker room. So it makes sense. And again, we're cautious to set expectations because Michael Clayton, Carson Boyd, those are the next two quarterbacks you would imagine in this trajectory for Illinois football. But I just think it's a good move for Brett Bielema to go do this. You're right. We'll see what happens with him. Maybe he'll end up as a tight end. Maybe he'll stay as a quarterback. That's what he is right now. That's what we're going to talk about him as right now. But I do also think you mentioned Jershawn Newton kind of getting to that point where it's like he's too good of an athlete to keep being a third or a fourth string quarterback. And
fourth, right? Like he's fourth.
Sure, yes. But you're getting to that point where it's like, can he be more helpful on the field somewhere else? That's something they've all got to figure out, right? And you're right. You and I can talk about this. We've talked about this since he signed.
After this season, I think the conversation would have to start happening because you got Shack coming in, right? And then are you going to go get a transfer? Like that's when I think that conversation really probably has to be had. Maybe they don't have to have it now because he's the fourth quarterback on the team this year.
Yeah, and think of it less as, if you're listening to it, think of it less as, man, you're not good enough to be, you're just a really good athlete and there's better quarterbacks in front of you. Yeah. And that's, if it makes sense for him, and maybe it won't make sense for him. I don't know. I don't want to speak for Jershawn Newton. I know playing quarterback was a big deal for him, but this edition, now you can kind of start to project out a little bit more. Obviously, you mentioned Sladen Shack in 27. They've had a 28 on campus. Quarterback recruiting doesn't stop, and it goes very quickly.
Yeah. So they add him in the class of 2026. And you mentioned it with the in-state. That's now 12 guys in this class after 11 in the previous class. Like, this is a backbone of Illinois players, and I think that's intentional. Brett Bielema talked about Wisconsin. We had to recruit Wisconsin kids, had to look like your state. Like, Illinois has a huge contingent of Illinois players playing for Illinois football. It might be summer for the kids, which means things slow down a little bit for them, but we know as parents, nothing slows down in the summer. It just seems to get busier and a little bit more chaotic. That's why it's nice to have meals taken care of. And guys, that's where Factor comes in. No time to cook. Well, that's where Factor makes it easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs so you can eat well without the shopping or the cooking. Saves a lot of time. Plus, it's quality, functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. They're just meals that fit your goals and your schedule. Healthier eating, calorie management, more protein, GLP-1 support. It's all there. 100 rotating weekly meals to choose from, plus the new Muscle Pro collection supports strength and recovery. It's great. Factor, always fresh, never frozen, and ready in about 2 minutes. No prep, no stress, guys. Head to factormeals.com/Illini50 off and use code Illini50 off to get 50% off your first Factor meal box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Head to factormeals.com/Illini50 off and use code Illini50 off to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. All right, Illinois adds 4 commitments in the class of 2027 last weekend. Joey, quarterback Sladen Shack, D-line Ryan Paulsen out of Iowa, Shack out of Mississippi, tight end Cade Newman out of Iowa, and Illinois offensive lineman Gavin Ericson-Staton out of Montini Catholic. What's the biggest thing you think they accomplished during that official visit weekend, Joey?
Got your quarterback. I mean, those other, your offensive line is settled. You get your first defensive line commit. There's stories kind of all the way with this, but the big thing is your quarterback position in 27 is settled. Obviously, you had Camden Lapati. He is committed to Michigan now, but they like Sladen Shack quite a bit. He's competitive as hell. I talked with his coach the other day, and he's kind of got this makeup. I know you talked to him. I want to just play the audio. I want to hear the audio. I was reading the quotes. I'm like, this kid sounds pretty cool. Like, the audio sounds good. He's got that real thick Mississippi accent. But it's the most important position. You typically only take one per class. And you go and you get a guy late in the cycle in terms of how quarterbacks are evaluated when they commit their timelines. And one that I know Illinois feels pretty good about adding him and being able to get in there late. Oklahoma State was interested in him. He was going to go visit them, I believe. And then Illinois got that to not happen, got him on board. So you get that going, man, and that matters. When you're hosting visitors, you're hosting offensive skill players. Hey, who's the quarterback going to be? What's going to be him? And, however those conversations happen, I just think that's a really big deal. And it was a kind of a highlight coming into that first weekend was, hey, just get that settled down. There's obviously other talent there, but you want to get that position spoken for.
Yeah, and once you lost Camden Lapati to Michigan, you're never going to fill it with a guy with quite the pedigree of a Camden Lapati, right? Of a 4-star prospect, top 247. You weren't going to find that guy. So it was really coming down to evaluation. It was late in the process. And when Art Sikowski visited Luke Altmaier for the NFL draft weekend, he went and visited Sladen Shack on the way. He evaluated 30 prospects in the class of 2027. Illinois could have tried to flip some guys. Illinois could have tried to get some of the uncommitted guys like Ryan Rakowski out of California, who had a really good Elite 11. But they loved Shack. And Oklahoma State came in and offered. That's not nothing because Eric Morris is a really good quarterback guru. And Ole Miss had offered early in the process before they took 2 other guys. But it's fair to say Illinois likes him a lot better in his rating and his offer list. Now, take that for what you will, because they just took him in his commitment, right? Like, I don't think he's quite the prospect Michael Clayton was or that Carson Boyd quite is, but I do find him really, really intriguing because, Joey, he's really beyond his years skill wise. And by that, I mean mechanics, footwork, delivery, all that stuff is like a college level player. Also can sling it around a lot. Our guy, Tom Loy on 24/7 Sports, really likes the way he can throw the ball with velocity. Not the biggest guy, he's probably 6'1", 6'2", but 200 pounds. Not the best athlete, but can move. But there's a swagger, there's a confidence, and there's a high football IQ here, Joey, and there's a huge competitiveness. And yes, I do want to get him on the podcast at some point so people can hear from him. But this is a phenomenal, interesting kid. Like I wrote in my story the other day, he owns his own landscaping business. He bought his own truck with his own business that employs some of his buddies down in Mississippi. So this is a go-getter. There's a guy who doesn't spend a lot of time watching video games or on his phone like most of us. Like he is just all business, whether that's with football, working out, or with his own business that he owns. But also he's incredibly intelligent. Like I heard a story from the Illinois staff, Joey, that they were taking him through film, breaking it all down. And he's like, hey, your coaches really put you in a good position here. They audibled in this and designed this play because this was happening. He said, Coach, I actually drew up that play at halftime. So like this is a kid that can read defenses, can handle an offense, can make all those calls at the line of scrimmage. Then it comes down to talent, right? Like what was the talent evaluation here? There's enough talent there, but I like him because he's going to add depth and competitiveness to this room and seems to be made of the right stuff. So I think he's Donovan Leary size, kind of demeanor with a little bit stronger of an arm. So we'll see what that turns into, but nice depth addition, competitive addition to the quarterback room.
Yeah, and he works with Luke Altmaier, same quarterback coach, David Morris, if that matters to anybody. But I just think those high accomplished quarterback coaches like that don't just have for the most part, I would imagine, an open door policy. You've got to have some skill to you, some stuff to you to get in there, and that's part of his story. So yeah, as far as
his offense coordinator at high school is Wyatt Rogers. It's Will Rogers, the former Mississippi State Washington quarterback. That's his dad. So he's had some good coaching around him.
Yeah, so to get this kid late in June, and we keep saying late, it's only late for quarterbacks, but to get him in June and when this recruitment really took off a couple months ago, I like what Illinois was able to get as kind of a Lopati, not a pivot, but to replace Camden Lopati, who is your first commit in this class. Is that they landed on their feet pretty well, all things considered, timeline and everything that goes into it.
Looking up the Illinois record book, one storyline from this weekend is that Illinois could have just landed its 2 first prep prospects from Iowa who could earn a letter at Illinois since the mid-90s. Illinois has not brought in a lot of guys from Iowa via the prep market, right? Like they've added a lot of JUCO guys that grew up in Iowa. They've added some transfers like a Cody Case who grew up in Iowa. But Ryan Paulsen and Cade Newman are start of that. But my other big storyline here, Joey, is Jared Elliott got his guy at tight end. And I'm encouraged in the early going by Jared Elliott. When we first heard from him during his introductory press conference, he's the first new assistant we got to hear from, right? Like I was like, oh, that guy could help in recruiting. Just his presence. He's a big dude, but he's also just an engaging dude. Former head coach at the Division I level at Western Illinois. I just thought that guy could add some juice in recruiting, which Illinois needs at tight end. Like this is a room that's had good stories. Tanner Arkin and Tip Ryman, phenomenal blockers, getting to the NFL. But it's clear they need to get more dynamic. They need to get more talented at that position in the passing game. And he came here late in this process. And I'm not going to sit here and say Cade Newman is going to solve things for Illinois, but he's added 2 intriguing guys. BJ Thurman out of the JUCO level, the number 1 JUCO tight end. They add him to the room. I'm interested in to see what he can become over the next, 3 or 4 years here at Illinois. Then you had Cade Newman, 6'5", 220, dynamic athlete, really good hands. He's going to have some development ahead of him. But that's what this position is, Joey. It's outside of the top 10 or 15 prospects of the class. It's a lot about evaluation and development. And these are 2 intriguing pieces that probably 2027, 2028, 2029, you'll see make an impact. But I think it's an encouraging start that Jared Elliott can go get BJ Thurman and beat out some Power 4 schools for him, can go get Cade Newman and beat out Iowa State and some other interesting schools for him. So I like Jared Elliott. I thought he could be a boost to recruiting. I think this is just an encouraging start.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the other thing I would add in tight end recruiting is you got to think outside the box a little bit. You've got to find a quarterback who maybe doesn't have all the mechanics you want, but he's big and he can go play tight end. You maybe got to find a big-bodied receiver who doesn't move as quickly as you would like and make him a tight end. But there's got to be something there, right? Like once you get past those top 10 or 15, I know we're repeating ourselves a little bit. It's either, hey, this is probably a wide receiver convert, or hey, this guy really needs to work on his hands a little bit more. Like if you've got both of them, you're a 4-star, a 5-star, and you're going to the top, 15% of college football more times than not. So, yeah, there's a little bit of projection involved in this position, a lot of projection involved in this position when you start getting down to those middle tier, Power 4 teams. Hey, what are things that fit? And I trust Jared Elliott to go find some of those things that fit and to go get. I mean, Cade Newman had other offers. This isn't some you're just really taking a flyer type guy. BJ Thurman was the number 1 JUCO tight end in the country. This isn't some massive flyer, but there's development involved. There's projection involved. And I do think, and that's okay. I mean, Illinois is not the only guys recruiting tight ends who need time to develop, who need to project a little bit. You need to get creative. But to get 2 guys who we think can help them down the line, and that's tight ends, like offensive line will call you in, probably 18 months, 24 months to see how these guys have developed, but they look like guys who can get out there and help you at some point on the football field. And Illinois needs help at that position. I would imagine you're going to have to get into the portal after the season to get more help at that position. And you want Jared Elliott on those phones too. But yeah, it's an encouraging start for him.
Yeah, Bart Miller, kudos to him, can kick his legs up in the class of 2027 after flipping Gavin Ericson-Staton from Iowa State. Good weekend for Illinois over Iowa State, getting Paulsen, Newman, and Ericson over Iowa State directly. But great class for him in state, adding Ericson to Pfeiffer and Mason Howellman, just a really good class. So kudos to Bart Miller there. And Ryan Paulsen, first edition on the defensive line, Joey, for this new staff. I really like his fit for this defense. He's going to have to develop, of course, as you said, asking 2 years about where he's at, but just a really disruptive, good burst off the line of scrimmage, which makes sense for this one gap scheme.
Yeah, Illinois was his first Power 4 offer, which kind of kickstarted a good run of Power 4 offers for him, and then he becomes the first commit on the prep commit on the defensive front for this. And so one gap scheme, we'll see. I mean, that seems to fit what he's able to do. He's got some versatility. He told me he prefers to play on the edge still. So, edge now is basically defensive end. Joe Barna, that's right. Yeah, we're not talking nose tackle. So if we say someone plays on the edge, it's a defensive end, because edges, as we've known them since Brett Beal Magai here, have kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. But yeah, it's another, you go in there, you get him, you evaluate. Jordan Thomas evaluated him, got him on campus in the spring, got him in an offer. A lot of these commits for Illinois this first weekend, these weren't those long-term, slow-burning ones. These are fast and furious, offer in the spring, you get them committed here in June, and they're not flyer guys either, right? They're guys that you still won Power 4 battles. It's just accelerated a little bit. That's kind of an underlying storyline with this first weekend of commits.
Yeah, the 2 guys who haven't committed yet, Keon Thomas, running back out of Warren Central in Indiana. He is visiting Iowa this weekend, so a Big Ten battle there. Then Don Spillers, who Illinois is recruiting as a wide receiver out of Detroit. Corey Parker's been all over that one, but Justin Stepp, I think he plays a little bit like Pat Bryant, Malik Turner. Illinois is battling Michigan State there. Michigan State is recruiting him as a safety, so 2 Big Ten battles there. All right, we got 7 more official visitors this weekend. You got the commits, Soren Pfeiffer and Sean Rice taking their OVs this weekend. But then 5 uncommitted visitors here, Joey. Wide receiver Bennett Conkey out of Geneva, Anthony James, Texas linebacker. I'm just going to call him Gus Augustin because that's what most people call him. Florida defensive lineman, Florida DB safety Tyrone Howard Jr., and Florida running back Steven Alexis. So 1 in-state kid, 3 Florida kids, and a Texas kid. What's your most interesting storyline for this weekend's official visitor group?
We have to probably start with Bennett Conkey. I have another one, but we have to start with the 4-star in-state wide receiver, the newly minted 4-star in-state wide receiver.
I had it all caps. Bennett Conkey, now a 4-star.
I do want to talk running back, so let's not forget about that, because it's a really fascinating development as how Illinois builds its running back in this class. But it's Bennett Conkey, man. What a rise. I mean, just an absolute – I mean, it's not Quentin Coleman basketball senior season rise, but but it's a pretty significant rise in the spring for Bennett Conkey
rise than that.
to go where he was and now to be a 4-star. And he is packing in the visits. I mean, in 2 weeks, he's seeing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 5 or 6 schools.
6.
Yeah, it's happening quick. Illinois was in on him. Justin Stepp, I've always said, I still stand by. I struggle to count Justin Stepp out of many recruiting battles. I think he's really, really good at what he does. And hey, now you got a chance to go get a 4-star in-state wide receiver who can bring you what that room could really continue to use. Outside, I mean, it still needs to be a longer wide receiver room, I think, but his speed is why we spent spring talking about Jay-Sean Platt, right? It's a different level of speed than what else is in that room. And you got a chance to get him on campus. You're going to get him on campus and make your best pitch, because this has turned into probably the most significant recruiting battle that Illinois is still sitting in at this moment in time.
Yeah, because right as Illinois offers, they got Conkey's first official visit they set was Illinois, but he's already visited Northwestern, Iowa, and Iowa State. I think your wide receiver sell is better than all of those. He's going to visit Wisconsin next week after this. I think your wide receiver sell is better than all of those. But then you have Indiana as his last official visit, and Indiana just won a national championship. They've been to 2 back-to-back college football playoffs, and they just had 2 NFL draft picks, 1 in the first round. Omar Cooper Jr., Elijah Surratt was a 4th-round draft pick. So pretty good sell for Indiana, but I think Illinois has done a really great job of recruiting him. I think they've set a great foundation. And you're right, Joey. The one thing, I mean, they've been so good developing receivers. 3 straight all Big Ten guys, right? Isaiah Williams, Pat Bryant, and Hank Beatty, and they're all a little bit different, right? But, like, they haven't had that just straight burner, like an Alec Pierce type who just stretches the field, is that deep threat, but also you can find creative ways to get him the ball in space and use that speed. Kid ran a 10.39 100-meter dash at the state track championships, 0.08 seconds off the state record, which was by Marcellus Moore, is a heck of a track athlete at Purdue. So, yeah, they've done a nice job here, but this is a big one. Like, this is another step at wide receiver where I feel great about what they have for the future. Braden Trimble, Nas Rankin, Kenyon Austin, who I'm a big fan of. They've added 6 wide receivers in the previous class, but this guy's just a little bit different than the rest of them. So, yeah, this is the biggest battle, I think, going into this week. And you'd love to close it down, Joey, before he goes to Indiana. And 6 official visits in like 16 days. That's a grind, man. That's a grind. So you need to bring some energy, make sure he has a good time, because I'm sure he's tired by now. But yeah, I think Illinois got a great sell, but Indiana's the one that makes me nervous.
Yeah, I was actually looking at Marcellus Moore, and I just still is incredibly fast. U.S. trials, but the reason I looked him up, Marcellus Moore was 5'6".
Yes.
Bennett Conkey is running that at 6'1" as a junior. I mean, I just want to put that in context. Marcellus Moore, I think, is still running probably for money, right? Bennett Conkey is a little bit off that state time, but he's much taller. Like, this is massive. This turned into, I wouldn't have believed this was going to be the biggest recruitment left in March. And then it's just absolutely taken off. And
we talked about
Illinois for
month, like Bennett Conkey and Matthew Brady, despite like their last late rises, and Brady commits to Michigan State after 1 OV. That's what's different with Conkey. Conkey seems very open in this process coming in, but we thought, hey, this guy's a big one, but it's become even bigger now that the profile is rising a little bit more.
Yeah, it's really is, especially the in-state thing, right? At a position that I have a lot of faith in what Illinois has got. So in looking that up, Jeremy, I did forget what you asked me or what you threw it to me, but it's the speed and the size and the length. I do know that there needs to be a little bit more length in that wide receiver room, and Conkey's not some giant by any stretch, but 6'1" with that speed, you kind of hit 2 things that room could use.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting Anthony James is back on the board here, because I thought he was supposed to take an official in April. That got canceled. Apparently it just got rescheduled. But, with the new staff, with Brady off the board, makes sense that maybe Archie Miller gets another dude here, because he's Archie McDaniel. Sorry, not Archie Miller. Archie McDaniel gets another linebacker in this room. He's already added Sean Rice. Anthony James, 6'3", 200 pounds. Needs to add some strength, but really great athlete that I think fits what they want in this defense. But my other big storyline, most interesting storyline, is Stephen Alexis still visiting. Committed to Colorado last week. Figured that would be off the board. Keon Thomas just visited. TJ Lewis visited in April. And TJ Lewis no longer visiting Indiana this weekend. The 3-star running back from Bolingbrook, who we talked all about a couple weeks ago on this podcast. I think Thomas might be the hardest one to land because Iowa is pushing hard for him. But if Alexis is visiting this weekend and TJ Lewis's options are drying up a little bit because other schools are taking other running backs, this makes for a fascinating running back decision maybe for Illinois. Do they take 2? I don't know. They got a lot of underclassmen, right? Do they take Tyrone Wheatley? I just imagine Joey's a big fan of TJ Lewis just because of the size, the power aspect of it. He's got some burst. But Stephen Alexis is a faster player, not quite as big and as powerful. But I can see like the speed part of it. Illinois has taken faster guys in recent classes at running back. So it'll be fascinating what those conversations are about. Who does Illinois push for, prioritize? Because if Alexis is coming on this visit, it tells me he is very interested in Illinois, and obviously Illinois really likes him. But TJ Lewis still on the board, so it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And Keon Thomas is somewhere in the middle of those, right? Yeah. I mean, he's got some power. I asked him, I said, "How would you describe your game? You like an athletic bruiser, like NCAA?" And he's like, "Are you familiar?" Yeah, dude, that's pretty much what I do. But yeah, so how this all shakes out, the idea of taking 2, I can't wrap my head around right now. But every time I've thought that, Illinois has taken 2. So
and they always end up with like 5 additions in the spring, right? So like if you just kind of bake that in, I would just be like, hey, if I can get both these guys, and I would imagine there's attrition at this position, right?
Because all these guys are clumped age group wise, right? There's not exactly the natural level of progression. Like, hey, this guy's out of here. I mean, you got Lawfer, you got Anderson, you got Valentine who are older, but then you've got a bunch of dudes, redshirt freshmen. What's like 5, right? 5 redshirt freshmen or true freshmen.
4. Yeah, 4 right now.
Yeah. So it's going to be really fascinating how that looks if they do take 2, but if they don't, how this all shakes out, I don't know. Stephen Alexis coming on campus, you're right. Okay. You're not coming here if you're not interested because you still got this Colorado commitment that is 5 days old.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I don't know how that's going to work. I do know he's got some wiggle to him. He's got some speed to him. What they add, who they add, we'll see. I'm with you. Keon Thomas did tell me he wants to make a decision by either Sunday or early next week. That tells me this is an Illinois-Iowa battle. He's visited UConn. He has a Cincinnati official visit set for next weekend. And if you're making your decision either Sunday or early next week, that would leave that one into question. So maybe we'll get some answers here, Jeremy, in the next 5 or 6 days to see how this goes. But this is quietly an interesting, how do they do this?
Because it's kind of big. Because Thomas, it's an easy, like that's a great decision to make. Illinois, Iowa at running back, right? Like they've produced a lot. So either way there, but like it feels like an Illinois decision in some ways at this running back position. So that's what makes it really, really intriguing. And that's a good spot to be at a position when you're choosing potentially between some of these prospects. Last thing I want to get to before we get to the Illini players we need to talk more about, Joey. Illini basketball newcomers, all 7 of them have arrived, the 6 prep prospects and Stefan Vox, the Providence transfer. We got the picture of them, and I see people talking about, it's like, oh, Stefan Vox is really tall. Yeah, he's 6'7", Joey. He's been listed at that as well. That's why, like, I always pause and say, I'm not saying this is this guy, but that's why you get the Luka Doncic vibes with him, because he's got this size that makes him so tough to defend. And that's what's exciting about adding him to this Illinois offense is maybe you can use that a little bit more. Booty ball, use that strength, get some separation on people, but also he just can stretch you out with how good of a shooter he is. But he can tap into those things more at Illinois. So seeing those guys on campus, obviously very, very exciting.
Yeah, and he looks like a guy who's been in a college weight program, right? He's a little bit more filled out than obviously other freshmen. There's going to be all the before and after pictures over the next 12 weeks from Fletch's time with him, whatever that looks like from a timeline standpoint. But yeah, he's a big guy, and he's got a little bit more girth to him than maybe you would think. And you look at him and you know what his skill set is because you've seen that on tape, and then you see pictures of him. It's like, yeah, that's probably why Brad Underwood really wanted this guy to come on campus. He told us the best offensive player in the portal by their measure. So getting everyone here for the summer, we'll see if anyone goes to play for their national teams, but just having a summer of just learning each other, especially that backcourt, Jeremy. That is, Brad Underwood told us that, right? Like, you've got to get some cohesion with Quentin Coleman, with Stephon Box, and get that all put together here, because the guards have been really, really good for Brad Underwood, and you want to get as much advanced in that as you can before those fall practices.
The value of having them all here in June, Joey. Even if David Mirkovic goes overseas to play for his national team, even if Stephon Box does that with Estonia, like, you might lose those guys for a couple weeks, but like, to have them all here already, like, think about the last 2 off seasons. It took David a little bit of time to get here. It took Tommy time to get healthy. It took Kasper Sekashonis was overseas playing a lot of tournaments. And then obviously Mihailo Petrovic took a long time to get over here. So to have all these guys here already, there's so much value in that, and just a lot of competitiveness in practice. And for those young guys, especially, just get the start, even in Vox, of being with Fletch.
Yeah, and if it's Mirkovic and Vox who go play for their national team, they've been in college for a year. They largely, I'm not trying to minimize the fact that, like, obviously you would like them in your system, working with you, building chemistry, all of those things, but they're not freshmen. They've been over here, they've done it. And the other thing is, national teams don't want bad players. So if they're going over there to play, obviously we know that they're good.
And they're wearing Illinois gear to all these tournaments where Illinois is starting to get a brand. It's like, oh, they got all these great players that we know from here. Like, yeah, it's a good,
is that good
for Illinois.
Yeah, that seems good.
Guys, you can feel that heat. The summer is here. That means trips to the pool and the golf course and grilling out in the backyard. I got my Blackstone fired up and been grilling a ton. And of course, Father's Day is on June 21st. And Dad doesn't want another tire watch, guys. You know what he wants? He wants the tender, juicy taste of his favorite grilled steak to perfection. Shop omahasteaks.com, and that's where you can get your high-quality steaks and meats, perfect for grilling season this summer. Plus, you get an extra $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. See site for details. Omaha Steaks has sent me all of their meats, guys, and every steak and every entree is flash frozen, vacuum sealed at the moment of carving, so no matter when your dad enjoys his meal, it will taste as fresh as the day it was carved. The fan favorite filet mignon, I've had a couple of those. They've earned the distinction of USDA certified very tender. So give Dad a license to grill with a gift from Omaha Steaks. This Father's Day, give the dad in your life something to savor. World famous Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com and get an extra $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code Illini at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. All right, let's talk about the players we need to talk more about, Joey, because all this offseason we've talked about Katen Hauser and Christian Martin and Micah Matalau and some of these new defenders, Carter Janke and Joe Barna changing positions. We talked about Matthew Bailey in this new chief role, what that all could be. But it feels like some of these guys have gone by the wayside. Like, we haven't spent enough time, and I'm sure we will in the coming months as we do our position previews. And
a lot of ball game left.
Yeah, we have Big Ten. But I just felt like
start
of summer, workouts start for football here soon with Tank Wright. Like, let's talk about some of these players that are going to have a huge impact on the season that I don't feel, or you don't feel like we're talking about quite enough. So this could be star players. This could be a guy you think takes a step forward that maybe we just haven't talked about enough. So it's a really wide open category here, Joey. I have a pretty consistent theme with mine, but I will let you start here. Which
I'm probably
need to talk about more.
Well, listen, I'm probably going to take one of your guys, so I am going to jump ahead and apologize for that. We spent a lot of time talking about Khalil Valentine. We spent a lot of time, well, mostly Khalil Valentine, right? Aiden Lawfrey, the only issue with Aiden Lawfrey has been his health. When he is on the football field, he is a productive player. Last year, 5.1 yards a carry. The year before that, 6.1 yards a carry. That's 75 attempts last year, 97 the year before. He's a good compliment to Khalil Valentine because he's bigger, but he's not Caden Fagan, right? He's still got burst to him. He, when healthy, has been a very productive player who's contributed to winning football games at Illinois. And it's just Khalil Valentine should get every single flower he's going to get, because I think he's on the cusp of what could be a really good year for him. But Brett Bielema, since Chase Brown left after the 2022 season, this has been a far more by committee approach. And I feel like sometimes we just sit here and it's like, oh, who's going to be the next 1,000-yard guy for Brett Bielema? Who's going to be the next 1,000-yard guy? What's the number one running back? And those are fair questions. But I think the picture more and more is, And it's not just at Illinois. Hey, this is a multi-back system here that's going to happen at Illinois. Obviously, someone's got to get more than someone else, but Aiden Lawfrey's in line for a lot, man, and he has been a darn good player when he's been on the field. You got to keep him healthy this season, and I think you could have a really, really strong 1-2 punch with him and Khalil Valentine.
If you told me Aiden Lawfrey had 12 healthy games and 130 or 140 touches, I'd say that guy's going to get 750 yards and be on the cusp of like an all Big Ten honorable mention. Kind of see like because when he is healthy, he is very, very productive. He just had those nagging injuries, which is why you can't have him as your number one back, right? But as a number two guy, yeah, man, like part of a rotation, or if he has to be a number one guy because Khalil Valentine's out for a game, yeah, I feel really, really confident in Aiden Lawfrey being a productive back. Kind of a tease. Might be a sign guy. He's under sign guy consideration for me because I don't feel like we are talking enough about Aiden Lawfrey. But I'm going to quibble with you here for a moment. You said we talk enough about Khalil Valentine. He leads my list. I don't think we talk quite enough about Khalil Valentine.
I can hear you hitting your desk. I love the passion.
Yeah, dang right. This is the engine of the offense. I don't feel like we're talking enough about it because they got good receivers and they have a new quarterback coming in, right? And the engine has been Luke Altmaier and the quarterback. But Khalil Valentine, he is potentially the star of the Illinois offense. Like if there is a breakout all Big Ten first team or second team guy on this offense, maybe I should go with a wide receiver because Illinois has done that. But Khalil Valentine should be in that conversation, right? He's going to touch the ball more than anybody on a skill player position this season. Last year, 131 carries for 614 yards, really good year. But I never felt like, did we have a full Khalil Valentine game outside of Purdue? He had one game over 75 yards. I think we're going to get more of that, Joey, because you're going to get more touches. Caden Fagan now at tight end. There are times I felt like they had to force the ball to Caden Fagan, right? Like sometimes late in the season, I thought they should have given it to him more. But like there were some games early on in the season where it felt like they had to force the ball. And we saw him get stronger last year. I thought he still can take another step. Like there's a physicality to his game that I really like. We know his quick cut ability. Now can he make two guys miss in the open field is my question. But another thing that really interesting to me, Joey, that kind of went under the radar in that Tennessee game, he had 3 catches for 28 yards. That might seem like a small thing, but you add that to his rushing production. Like I feel like the running backs need to get more involved in the running game. So 3 of his 10 receptions, 28 of his 55 receiving yards came in that bowl game. He had a really good performance despite only getting 11 touches. So I expect his touches to be 15 to 25 a game this year. And behind a talented offensive line with a good passing game around him, I think he can be one of the more productive running backs in the Big Ten. And I don't know if yet we're talking about Khalil Valentine like that. He needs to prove it. He needs to become a better blocker, Joey. Him and Aiden Lawfrey both. I thought Aiden took a little step last year. Khalil needs to take a big step forward to be a 3-down back. But I think this guy's going to get close to 200 touches. And that's an engine of the offense. I don't know, can he have the Chase Brown 2021 year, right? Where he's 900 yards, 1,000 yards, getting a 200 receiving yards, something like that. This guy's going to be a huge part of any kind of offensive success they have.
Yeah, I agree with all that. He was kind of on my list. I thought we've talked more about him than Lawfrey, but you made a very compelling point that perhaps we have not. But the other thing,
I love Aiden Lawfrey, like when he's on the field, so I'm focused on that. But at the same time, like we know, like Khalil is the guy here, and he's not just a guy at running back; like he's the guy of this offense.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we have to factor in this is we start imagining maybe some statistical output, like you get way too far ahead of that, is there is one less mouth to feed in the running back room. I still think this is a by committee. Him and Lawfrey are going to be – he'll have more than Lawfrey, but it's not going to be a huge gap like we saw with Chase Brown in 2022. But you don't have Caden Fagan as that running back anymore. And Jordan Anderson's in that room. I don't expect he's going to have the same handoff workload that Caden Fagan has. So those carries are going to go to Khalil Valentine and Aiden Lawfrey. So there's going to be bigger numbers that come out of that, right? And we know Illinois, even as high as they are on Caden Hauser, and they're high on Caden Hauser, and I get it, and their wide receivers, they want to run the ball. They've got to get better at doing it more consistently, and that's with their offensive line. But we know that as far as this passing game is advanced, it's come a long way for under Brett Bielema and even before Brett Bielema, this is a team that still wants to run. So those guys are going to have opportunities and, frankly, when healthy, more opportunities than they had last year because Caden Fagan was a high workload guy for a lot of his time there.
And maybe I shouldn't look at it this way, but Josh McCray left last year. Caden Fagan moves positions. This is a 4-star kid from Arizona. Like, they have prioritized keeping him, right, for this moment. for this moment. And obviously last year was he took a step forward, but they didn't have to do that. They have, because they think Khalil Valentine can be a star here. So, all right, next, Illini player we need to talk more about, Joey.
I don't know that the impact. So we just talked about 2 really big impact guys, right? And we think those 2 are going to have big impacts. But we haven't really talked about Gavin Stoffel at all. So, and I don't, it's kind of a bad time maybe to bring him up after we just talked about 2 high impact offensive guys, because I don't expect him to be that. But a lot of the conversation has been Christian Abney, who I feel like is just very known, even though he hasn't played a ton of football at Illinois. Like, I've got a pretty good imagination for what Christian Abney is going to give Illinois. And then it's been all Caden Fagan talk. And I get it. He's the way he's built, the success he had at running back, the idea that really for a lot of years that maybe he could be at another position. So I understand where all of that's come from. Illinois has talked a lot. They've been asked a lot about it. And they've talked in depth a lot about Caden Fagan. And here's Gavin Stoffel, a guy that we really thought going into last year was going to be the number 2 to Tanner Arkin. That ended up being more or less Christian Abney, and there wasn't a whole lot of tight end depth last season. Stoffel missed some time in the spring with an injury. I do think that happened earlier on, so I don't know if that's going to push into training camp. But he's going to get 200 snaps, man. And that might be on the low end of things. And he's more fluid than he looks. I mean, he's a bigger guy, but he can move a little bit. Another year in the system. Again, like, I really hate the timing that I brought him up, but he was next on my list. I just don't want to set any false expectations. But he is going to be maybe the number 2 tight end in this offense, and definitely the number 3 tight end.
I love that you brought him up,
or
Joey.
Top 3, rather.
I still think even if Caden Fagan's the number 3 tight end, he'll probably lead them in receptions at that position, just because that's going to be his role, is finding a way to get the ball in his hands. But it would not shock me. Like, I'm not going to predict it, but it would not shock me if Gavin Stoffel had more snaps at tight end this year than Caden Fagan. I think Caden Fagan's a 2-year project at this position. Now, I think there's creative ways you can use him. I love that if you have an injury at running back, hey, Caden Fagan, you know how to play this position. We'll bring you back over here. I'm really intrigued by him. But yeah, like, sometimes you just need a tight end that can block, that has experience, that can be, a check down target. I think Gavin Stoffel's ready to be that. And I think he can be productive in 12 and 13 personnel. So yeah, I think you're going to see him on the field. Probably the more people know even who his name is. Like, so I think Gavin Stoffel's a guy that's going to play more than people expected. Because I think some are hoping Caden Fagan's the breakout star at tight end this year. And I just don't know if that's fair for him, even if I do think there's going to be some fun things with Caden Fagan. But there's going to be some bread and butter stuff that Gavin Stoffel and Christian Abney are going to be in the field as the 2 10 tight ends and 12 personnel, right? Like, might be a little bit boring to people, but it can be very productive for Khalil Valentine and Aiden Lawfrey.
Yeah, and listen, I think you and I will both put our, admit to it. If in November Caden Fagan's having this year, like, yeah, we slow played that too much. Like, we would both say that. I don't think it's fair to really, really ramp the expectations up for him. And by doing that, if those expectations start to get a little out of hand, someone like Gavin Stoffel, who's much more experienced at the tight end position, kind of falls a little bit by the wayside conversationally, and you're not talking enough about him. So yeah, I like that idea that Fagan could lead that position in receptions, but Stoffel has more snaps than him. And I'm not trying to pour cold water on the Caden Fagan idea. I'm fascinated by it. I'm incredibly intrigued by it. I just don't like, it's our job to be fair to the people listening. And, I think there's a fairness to Caden Fagan too, to not expect him to come out here and be some tight end 1 in the Big
Sam
Ten.
Laporta in year 1.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go with Brandon Henderson. Like, we talk all about the 4 new starters on the offensive line, and for good reason, right? There's a lot of questions, a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of talent with guys like Christian Martin and Nathan Knappich. Like, the talent and the question marks for both those guys at tackle, it's both exciting and concerning, right, at tackle. Micah Madalau, I'm super excited. That's a sign guy, Joe. I can promise you that right now. Jake Renfro and TJ McMillan at center. Like, there's a lot of newness and concerns there. But part of this offensive line success has to be Brandon Henderson taking a step forward, right? Because this guy with 19 starts, he's the one returning starter here, but he's the one offensive lineman the last 2 years that hasn't gotten all Big Ten honors, Joey. He hasn't gotten the benefit of the doubt of just being a Brett Bielema offensive lineman that he's going to get in the consideration for that. And he's been a serviceable starter, right? I think he's been a serviceable starter the last 2 years. His PFF grade 63.3, last year 59.7. You don't take those to the bank, but for me, those are about fair, around the 60 to 65 level for Brandon Henderson, which I think is a serviceable starter. But he needs to take
especially if that's like your lowest graded offensive lineman. Maybe he wasn't for Illinois, but like that is more than fine for what he was on that offensive line.
Yeah, he's a more than fine guard in the Big Ten the last 2 years, right? But he needs to take a step forward into a good starter, right? Because you don't know what these other guys are. So you need him to take a step forward like Josh Gesky did last year and not do what Zy Chrysler did, which was kind of just you stayed serviceable starter, right? Like Zy Chrysler, solid starter for a program like Colorado is a big boon to them because they were having bad starters. But for Illinois to have good offensive line, I think Brandon Henderson needs to take a step forward as a leader and take a step forward as a guy that's like, oh yeah, he's going to be an all Big Ten consideration at the end of the year and be a good Big Ten starter. So is that 20% better, 25% better? I don't know. But you'd really like, if you want to go PFF grades, you'd like him to be around the 70 range, that 68 to 75 range, right? Like that's where you'd like to see Brandon Henderson in his fourth year and his third year of starting. You'd like to take him a step forward because, boy, in his fifth year, Joey, because he's probably going to get a fifth year with that 5-for-5 rule likely passing later this month, like Brandon Henderson could be enter next year as a NFL draft prospect.
Yeah, 25% better, 25% more consistent. However, you want to look at it, because it still felt like there were even times last year that Brandon Hansen was just right there on his heels. And I like Brandon Hansen. I think he's obviously there's a lot to like about him, but Brandon Henderson has started enough games that it shouldn't have been right there on his heels at that point of the season. And it's kind of been the story of right guard a little bit for the last few years, because Zy Chrysler was that guy until Brandon Henderson was right there on his heels, and he started taking those snaps from Zy Chrysler. And I don't know that, there's maybe some options to take some of those snaps from Brandon Henderson. I don't think it's at that point, obviously, because I don't really worry about him not winning that right guard job or keeping that. But there is talent behind him. Like TJ McMillan can play guard. Micah Matalau is a guard. Like there are options back to Brandon Hansen is back to. So you just want to see him take that. I think 25% better is right. Just, dude, you are a returning starter on this offensive line. You've got a lot of snaps in college football. You are actually really one of the prizes of that good East St. Louis offensive line, a guy that you're athletic as heck. We thought he was going to be the left tackle. We thought we'd be talking about him at left tackle if you would have asked us 2 years ago. At this time, he settles in at right guard. They've settled him in at right guard. And I think that is just as important as anything else, because he's just, for a while in his career, he was this intriguing chess piece. Like, oh, yeah, Henderson's taking some reps at tackle. And we kind of are interested in him at center. Let him be a right guard and see where that can go. And if you're Brandon Henderson, if you're being allowed to be only a right guard, take that step, right? Be that guy for Illinois, because the talent's there, athleticism's there, the experience is there. It's time for him to really take that step forward, especially with some question marks a little bit at tackle, in the sense of adding strength, learning, if you're Nathan Knappich, how to be a full-time Big Ten starter. If you're Christian Martin, a new school, a new conference, new Power 4 opportunities there. So this feels like Henderson can really take this offensive line here and be that guy.
Can I give you one more offensive guy before I switch?
Offensive or offensive line?
Offensive guy.
Okay, I had another offensive lineman, TJ McMillan. You touched on that. I do have another offensive guy too, so go ahead and I'll do mine.
Okay, I got one more offensive guy. And this is a storyline you have covered, the similarity between his path and a former Illini Stars. I'm going Colin Dixon. Sign guy, yes. I've long liked Colin Dixon, but Hank Beatty had such a great first half of the year. Hudson Clement had such a great back half of the year. You get Alex Perry coming here with all this size. You have Jay-Sean Platt, who's like the buzzworthy guy of that wide receiver room. I think we need to talk about Colin Dixon more because the path he has taken and Pat Bryant have taken are very, very similar. And year 4 was Pat Bryant's just explosion, right, into all Big Ten season. So I am not going to predict today that Colin Dixon is an all Big Ten second team wide receiver and a top 75 NFL draft pick, okay? But first year between these two, Dixon redshirted, better wide receiver room at that point. Pat Bryant had 6 catches for 98 yards. Second year, Dixon 18 for 264. Pat Bryant 34 for 453. Third year, Colin Dixon quietly 35 receptions for 548 yards, 5 touchdowns. Steady Eddie, really good in the red zone as well. Great blocker. Pat Bryant 43 receptions for 560 yards and 7 touchdowns in his third year. Bryant's fourth year, 54 receptions, 984 yards, 10 touchdowns. What is Colin Dixon's year? I don't think it's going to be close to 1,000 yards, Joey. But like if he had 700 yards at the end of the year with 50-something catches and a handful plus touchdowns, that would not surprise me because he's just every game, you know what you're getting out of Colin Dixon. He's a great blocker. He's going to be on the field for 700 snaps, 600 plus snaps this year. So I just think there's another level. And I think quietly Colin Dixon ended up a top 30, top 25 wide receiver in the Big Ten that we didn't talk about a lot because these other receivers had some great moments. So I just think Colin Dixon, Hudson Clement could lead this team in reception yards. Potentially Jay-Sean Platt could, but my bet would be Colin Dixon just because I think the steadiness of what he brings.
Yeah, he was the guy that I also had offensively. And Hudson Clement is not far behind him, honorable mention-wise. However, those two, someone's going to emerge as a number 1. Probably out of those two. We'll see how that shakes out. Colin Dixon's also like a top 6 most important guy on this team to me. Like, team one, I think he's – yeah, and I think he's no worse than their number 2 wide receiver. He might be their number 1 wide receiver. His versatility is everything to me for what they do offensively. He played outside when Hank Beatty was having his season. He played inside when Pat Bryant was having his season. To be able to do that, to open the door for Jay-Sean Platt somewhere, to open the door for Alex Perry somewhere, to open the door for Braden Trimble, like that matters too, even though if it doesn't show up in stats. But I'm with you. I think the stats could be pretty good. We saw him at a camp the other day. He's enormous. He's built more like a running back than that long wide receiver, but he has been really quietly productive for Illinois and just kind of overshadowed by someone having that whoa type of year that kind of didn't come out of nowhere, but really was not on everyone's radar. That if could be Colin Dixon.
Stays here for 5 years, like he could end up like a top 10 receiving yards guy at Illinois. It's kind of insane.
And we're not talking about, you're right, like it's just kind of quietly, and that's when you're as consistent as Colin Dixon is, when you're as consistent as Hudson Clement became late last year, you kind of just assume like, yeah, those guys are going to be good. Hey, what about this Platt guy? Or is it Trimble time? Like, I get it. We have done that, right? Like you and I have sat here and done all of those things, but yeah, Dixon's been a little bit over. I would right now rank him as the 6th most important player on this team.
Sounds like you got a list that we're going to unveil at some point, Joey.
I do. Yeah, I do.
I don't
know if it's any good. I actually need you to go through and fix all the crappiness of it, but I'm not letting you touch the top 6.
I think that's what started this like podcast idea was you sent me that. I'm like, God, we haven't talked about him enough. We haven't talked about him. Like, so I think that's part of why this podcast came to be. All right, Joey, you got one more offensive guy?
No, that was it. It was somewhere between Dixon and Clement. And your case was compelling enough for me to put Dixon in the no doubt number 1. I quickly mentioned TJ McMillan.
Number 6.
Think of him as a center. Yeah, we think of him as a center so much. He is like he's a guy who could be a starter on this team. I don't think I would project that because Matalau is Matalau. Renfro is really productive, and we just talked about Brandon Henderson. But I don't think that gap is very big between some of those guys and TJ McMillan. And we did justifiably talk about him a lot in the spring because he got those first team center reps with Renfro out. We'll see if Renfro can stay healthy, kind of Aiden Lawfrey type of conversation there. But this is kind of how we talked about Brandon Henderson a few years ago as that 6th offensive lineman. Who was it? It was Hansen, I think, last year that we really talked about that. Hansen's still in that conversation, but man, McMillan's right there.
All right, let's switch to defense. You want to lead us off?
I'm I will.
All right,
go ahead. I will then. Who's going to do this? Is it Pat Farrell? I think it's Pat Farrell. It is a guy on the defensive line. Like Carter Janke, we've talked a ton about. Joe Barna. I found it, by the way.
There it is.
I found it. If it's and you got me that ring light, so it really lights it up. It shows us in its true form.
The original. That's got to be put in a. You can't just hang that around like for your dog to chew up, or for like
he pees. He doesn't chew. Thank God.
Mug to stay in it. You got to put that thing in a frame or something.
It's the original.
That's right.
It is the original one.
Signed by Mr. Barna.
I was just going to gift it to him for him to throw away when I'm not looking. But we've understandably talked a lot about him. I'm very high on what he can be. But we also have to listen to when these coaches talk and how they kind of present people. And they are presenting Pat Farrell like if I'd say it's starter, but no worse than their fourth defensive lineman. I've long wondered if Janke can play nose to open the door for Farrell a little bit more on the edge, but he's been around. Seems like he's kind of taken that. He's a nice guy, but you can tell like he's in this kind of like blossoming leadership role. So he's got a little shit to him a little bit, and that's starting to show up in not a bad way, but just in a way that you want one of your leaders to have a little bit of that swagger.
He looks good.
So they're basically telling us, hey, Pat Farrell, and we are kind of consumed with like these new guys, and I get it, and it's exciting, but this is development. It's a development position in a system that prides itself on development. This feels like the time.
I'm trying to think who I compared him to with my Illini confidence signing. It was probably like Doug Pilcher or something like that. But the way I kept thinking about Pat Farrell when Illinois took him, he didn't have a lot of Power 4 offers from anybody else, but like it's just that typical Iowa defensive end that they get that by the time he's a junior, senior, he's going to be a starter and he's going to be a really good player. He's going to stop the run really well, and he's going to get his hands in the passing lanes. Going to end up with 5 pass breakups. Like remember Joe Evans doing that against John Paddock when Illinois lost there. Like I just see Pat Farrell as that kind of player. Like is he going to flash as much as a guy like Joe Barner or Gabe Backus? Maybe not, but by the end of the year, he's just going to be a really solid, productive defensive lineman for you. And that's what you want. That's development. That's year 4, year 5 of some of these defensive linemen, offensive linemen. You want him to take that step. So yeah, he's going to be a big piece of their rotation.
Yeah, I'm all the way with you on that. And I just, like I said, man, it feels like they keep putting the breadcrumbs there, and we'll take a few, and then it's, we kind of wander our eyes to Barner, or to Janke, or to Daryl Prater, and all those guys are going to be in the rotation.
God, I'm a fan of, yeah.
Yeah, I had him also written down. But yeah, at some point you just got to listen to what's being said. What's being said is Pat Farrell is going to play a ton of snaps.
Yeah, this should. All right, my guy. You probably have him top 3 or top 4, I would imagine, on that list of most important players. But we are talking about Xavier Scott quite enough, right? This is a first-team all Big Ten guy, a guy who really should be in the NFL, right? And he is back on your team. And he had an awesome 2024. Obviously, all that ball production, 5 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, game-changing plays. Obviously, Kansas comes to mind. He's awesome in run support. Just some of the things Devin Witherspoon did with like how he's able to read the defense. He's obviously great with film study because his instincts are phenomenal. He played 3, but he only played 3 games last year, so we just haven't seen him in a long time, Joey. But he was good in those 3 games. He gave up 1 touchdown against Duke, like a long touchdown. But he only gave up 4 receptions on 14 targets. He had 2 pass breakups. His injury is why this secondary wasn't very good. It just changed when he left the field. They had to call the defense differently, and they just lost a superstar college player on the field, and what should have been probably a top 100 draft pick. So you get basically, like we've talked all about Matthew Bailey, and I am so excited to see what he's going to be in this defense. We've talked about Juice Clark. This is a Juice Clark podcast, but like we haven't talked enough, at least you and I think about Xavier Scott and the impact of bringing him back along with Juice Clark, who's a proven number 1 corner, and Matthew Bailey, who's just an unbelievable safety when healthy. Maybe he's not the most athletic dude, but just a big physical presence in the middle of that defense. But Xavier Scott's the game changer of this defense potentially, right? And in this defense at that nickel position, I mean, he could be better than he was in 2024 potentially overall. So just a high expensive player, obviously, that you're bringing back here, but I think he's worth every penny because he's a game tilter potentially.
Yeah, he's a star. We've seen him change games during his time at Illinois. You're right. Once he went down, and I think there are reasonable questions as to why he was still in at that point in the game. Like I know someone's listening. He should have been out. Yeah, he probably should have. Right. I mean, now if he's out, he's not here. And you probably still would have rather had him last season. But yeah, I mean, just the leadership. I remember talking to Sidney Brown about Matt Bailey a few years ago and just talked about the chemistry that he had with Quan Martin, the chemistry that those two had with Devin Witherspoon, from Kirby Joseph and into Kendall Smith. Like that matters. I don't care what the scheme is. Your chemistry with two of your vocal leaders at those positions what they're now calling the chief position, which is Matthew Bailey, and we just call it the nickel again with Xavier Scott. Like that is a really, really big deal to get everything just flush back there, to make sure everyone is on the same page and you can kind of trust, hey, maybe he's not as good at this. I got to, position myself here. Just whatever those little intricacies are that we don't see, that the fan doesn't see, but that those guys know, hey, I'm a half step in a different direction because I need to help Matt on this, or I need to help Xavier. Like that stuff is important.
It's kind of like an offensive
those guys,
line, right? Like it's kind of like an offensive line. And the thing that like Matt's talked about, Juice has talked about, that is really important in this defense is communication. Because you're doing so much, you have to be on the same page, and you're all so responsible for this part of because it's more one gap than two gap. Like if you mess up your play, the whole defense is going to screw up here, right? So like that's why they say communication is so important. They're all on the same page. It pays that you have 3 or 4 guys that have played together a lot, especially the 3 stars back there.
Yeah, there's going to be a game early, and I don't know which game. Obviously, it's going to be that Xavier Scott's going to do some stuff. It's going to be a nice reminder of like, oh yeah, this guy was a draft pick going into last season, and a guy that was really intriguing. And I'm with you. I think Matthew Bailey is going to get all of the love and all of the attention, and it's deserved. And he's really good about embracing all. Xavier's a little quieter, so like Matthew Bailey's out singing at the 7th inning stretch with Brett Bielema. Xavier Scott's just a little bit. I was really happy to talk to him on the pod in Vegas last year because I thought we saw a little bit more of that, and that matters just in the frequency of conversation. But yeah, you're right. He is no worse than number 4, and he's not number 4.
Okay, hear this much. All right, give me another defensive guy, Joey. We'll wrap up soon.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling. Like we just need to acknowledge we've talked about every linebacker, and I still don't really know what it's all.
Like Daniel Brown has got his fair share of talk on this podcast.
Yeah, but I'll say though, with that, every time I think I kind of understand how this linebacker group is going to be used, I talk to somebody else, and it's like, oh, that's not what I thought. And that's exactly what Illinois wants. They're thrilled to have nobody really know what this is all going to look like. So I say that because I don't really know what linebacker I would put in this conversation.
We've talked like the one guy I would think, hey, maybe we're not talking enough about James Kreutz because he's played a lot, or Robert Edmondson, because like Grant Bierman's really exciting as a 4-star guy. We've talked all about him. Like even Ish Conte, we've talked a lot about on this podcast because like it's a new role and this defense fits him better. And we've talked all about Daniel Brown. So it'd be Kreutz or Edmondson, right? Like that just are kind of proven FBS linebackers that could be solid presences for you.
Yeah, so somewhere in that, I just wanted to acknowledge, like, if we don't mention a linebacker, that's why there's a little confusion. We've talked a lot about that confusion. I'm torn between 2 corners right now because I think the starting 2 corners, Juice Clark and Jaquan Morris, thank you. He's probably a sign guy for me. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I think those 2 are established. I think Nick Hankins had a really good spring, and he is physically as impressive as they come. He is a guy who, even if it wasn't for the impending 5-for-5, he probably would have not taken a red shirt as a true freshman. He might be, I think he's no worse than the 5th corner, and the truth is he's probably battling for 3 and 4. I mean, I know Tanner Heckel is still in that conversation. He might be a guy that you bring up. I
had Tanner Heckel. I'm not giving up on him. I've seen talented DBs struggle and then ball out later. # Xavier Scott. So yes, that's my Tanner Heckel mention. I'm not giving up on him yet.
I knew you were, but I don't want to put unfair expectations on Nick Hankins, but I think he's going to play defensive snaps that matter this season. I just want to kind of brace people for that because he is incredibly gifted.
Yeah, among the freshmen, and maybe we'll do a podcast of this at some point, Nick Hankins would top my list, right, of guys that will make an impact on this season. Nas Rankin would have been high up there, but he missed spring. So I'm just not sure. And
there's just a lot of humans in front of him.
Wide receiver, right? And then Champ Smith,
Yes,
backup left tackle, backup right tackle. I don't know. Like, it could be your backup left tackle this year. So he's a physically impressive. He's different. So that's another dude to look forward to.
I would say my Nas Rankin counter, and I know we're veering a little bit. I think he might be the punt or kick returner.
Yeah, Nick Hankins could do that.
That's a good call. I think one of those freshmen that we that we talked a lot about, one of those 4 stars or high 3-star guys of skill players, they might end up being the returner.
Yeah, let's get Khalil Valentine.
You don't want Khalil. Go. No more Khalil Valentine doing that. No Aiden Lawfrey doing that. You don't want probably Colin Dixon back there doing that.
For one of the 12 times you return a kick, right? Like, why get injured on that? They don't even return kicks anymore. At least get them on the field that way. I kind of question, have we talked enough about this guy? But I don't think we can not bring him up enough. It's Mac Rusetich.
He was on my list, yeah.
I think I underrated Miles Scott throughout his career. I knew who Miles Scott was. Just steady, solid veteran, team captain. Like, I know the value, but I feel like I underrated his value, and his departure leaves a big hole because there are some physical things that, like, he just kind of lacks. Like, Mac Rusetich does not lack any physical categories. He's a massive dude for a safety, great athlete. The range is great. The speed is really good, but Miles Scott is just a better football player, right? Like, you just count on him. He's got – people could point out like 1 or 2 missed tackles. He didn't miss many tackles out of that free safety position, which is huge. He did not get burned deep more than once or twice the last 3 years. It's phenomenal, keeping everything in front of him. And there was good ball production. It wasn't quite Kirby Joseph, but Kirby Joseph's an all-pro free safety. He had 7 interceptions over the last 3 years and a couple pick sixes. Like, that is a really good player. Obviously gets drafted by the Denver Broncos, so it kind of proves it even more. It's time for Mac Rusetich. It's year 4 for him. He had a really encouraging first 2 years of flashes, and none more than the Michigan State game, right? Where Aiden Childs, he made some open field tackles against him. It's like, had us talking last year. It wouldn't shock us if he maybe took some of Miles Scott's reps just because of the talent here. He had a bad year last year. I know he was a little banged up. Joey, you got to catch up with him. And he was really reflective and owned some of that, but he didn't tackle well. He didn't read things as well as Miles Scott. And that's such an important part of that free safety position. He's got some competition with Levon Williams and James Finley coming in here, but Finley wasn't here for the spring. Levon Williams is smaller than Mac Rusetich. It's time, Mac Rusetich, to become that free safety. You have experience. Now let's see that football IQ, the instincts, take another step, because the physical tools, we've seen it with some picks, with some great tackles. The physical tools are there.
Yeah, I'm with you. How much, I'm curious what that free safety spot looks like in this defense. I don't know that it's going to be radically different. I mean, it's just the nature of that, but that, we'll be curious how that all kind of shapes up. I do want to, you mentioned a guy that, like Miles Scott, we sat on this pod and had this, like, could Mac Rusetich get those? Like, that is one, not a whiff, because it's not like we're out on Miles Scott, but that got me thinking while you were talking, like, the 2 guys who, and they taught me a little bit in terms of just like pumping the brakes, was, hey, could Mac Rusetich take Miles Scott? So this is not a knock on Mac. It's, we should probably not undervalue Miles Scott anymore. And then in 2023, it was, could Malik Elsey come and take snaps from Casey Washington? Yeah. That's going to happen. I was like kind of grounded in on that. And that didn't happen. Not only did it not happen, Casey Washington got drafted. So like that had taught me a little bit, like, guys who, like, there are exciting young players, and sometimes those guys rise up there, but guys who are super trustworthy and who are super experienced, and because of that, they're trustworthy, there's a huge value there. And coaches value all of those things. Like, those 2 in particular are really probably why I annoy people a little bit on here. I'm like, hold on, pump the brakes. I don't want to be in that spot again.
No, it's like why with Caden Fagan, it's like, I'm really intrigued here, but let's wait. Let's wait a little bit, right? Like, or with a guy like Grant Bierman. Guys barely played defensive football at this level. I love Grant Bierman as a prospect. Do I expect him to be the best linebacker on this team this year? I think that's unfair to Grant. Right? Like, even if the physical tools are there, like, he's just got to be able to gain that trust. He's got to be able to get on the field. He's going to make some mistakes. But that's why it's like, hey, most of these guys do need time. Even Khalil Valentine, 4-star prospect, comes in and can't break a tackle, right? Can't break the tackle, can't block anybody. It takes time for guys, most guys, to learn that. And the guys who do make big impacts are freshmen are usually just the freak 5-stars, right? That just are physically so gifted, they can overcome some of those stuff.
Yeah, or the position where it's you really, really just need an infusion of
2017 Lovie Smith. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I do think there's a space for freshmen. So I don't say that to write off any freshmen or redshirt freshmen. But, man, there's just so much value in those old guys who have played a lot of ball. And maybe they're not perfect players. And maybe they'll get beat here. And maybe there's a more athletic player behind them. But just guys who are good football players. And, like, they've cultivated trust in this coaching staff. So that's those two. I've been meaning to say that for a little bit. I think about those two instances quite a bit. Like, I brought up how much we're maybe a little behind on Hank Beatty just in terms of what his snap allotment would be last season. And we were off. I was off. Maybe I shouldn't speak for you on that. But, like, I think back to the Casey Malik and the Miles and Mac thing quite a bit. And, again, not as anything against Malik or Mac or Sadich, but just there's value in experience and being old and being around this weight program and learning to fail and coming out the other end of it. And, you know, those guys tend to find their way on the field quite a bit if they've already been on the field. And
it's instincts and football IQ. The stuff you can't really measure. It's an outside observer all the time, but then when you see it on the field or you don't see it on the field, you can really tell. Like, when guys are out of position all the time, it's pretty clear, right? And you don't give credit to guys who are just in position to keep a pass to a 12-yard gain instead of a 50-yard touchdown, right? Like that's
or Dylan Rosiak. You know, outside of the forced fumbles, there weren't a lot of flash plays, but he was consistently where he needed to be. Yeah. Who was Ryan Mead, right? Like, Ryan Mead's a great example of that. Obviously, maybe the productivity wasn't there. Ryan Mead was more times than not either going to the right spot just to get there fast enough or in the right spot. Like, if you do that, coaches put trust in you, man. That's just how it goes.
At some point, you do need to have talent at this level to play.
Yes. Yeah. We're not trying to say that every former walk-on who's been around for 4 years shouldn't be overlooked. But, like, I'm glad you brought up Miles, because I've been meaning to go on that. And that's 100% a perfect example of this.
I'm good. Those are the guys I really wanted to mention. You got any more, Joey?
No, there's probably a defensive lineman out there in addition to Pat Farrell. Is it King Liggins? Is it D.D. John? Is it Isaiah White? It's one of those second-year guys, probably second, third-year guys. Maybe the two freshmen we would probably talk about in that would be Liggins and Parker Krim. Kingston Shaw could physically looks. So there's probably one that's going to turn up in training camp that we're going to hear a decent bit about that we hadn't talked a ton about right now, but I think we know who the major players on that line are going to be.
All right, good stuff. I'm glad we had that conversation. I just feel like, hey, yeah, we do need to talk about these guys more. So I'm glad we did. We certainly will as we go along and do our season previews here on the Illini Inquirer podcast. But thank you to everybody for listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a follow, rating, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. But for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day, great weekend, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.
Bye, everybody.